981. And we're streaming live on YouTube as well. You can catch the live stream up on our channel. It's Smooth 981. And we're talking about Buhari. Okay, the topic basically is fuel subsidy palliatives being up to Tinubu, the president-elect, and that is according to the President Buhari administration.
Yeah, Chris Ngige, Dr. Chris Ngige, Minister of Labor and Employment, was speaking to journalists yesterday. And good morning, Zibby. Good morning to all our listeners out there. He was speaking to journalists yesterday, and essentially said that, well, they have their own ideas and suggestions on palliatives, but they will leave it up to Tinubu's government to implement them. So that was essentially the gist of what he said. He said, look, it's up to them to accept it. It's up to them to reject it, but it's all on him. That's basically like, this is his problem now. Let him sort it out.
So what is the Buhari government essentially saying by, handing over this full subsidy palliative to the Tinubu administration, which starts from the 29th?
Well, I mean, look, they don't want to force him to choose their own palliatives. It kind of makes sense. It just essentially says that, look, whatever palliatives you decide to use to cushion the impact of subsidies, it's up to you. It's your government. You pick the palliatives. We don't want to pick it for you. We don't want to tell you what it is that you should be using, what palliatives you should be putting in place. So you do it. You will decide. And I think that makes sense. I think that's a reasonable choice to make. They don't want to impose, although, Buhari did amend the constitution to allow states to generate their own electricity. It's a good idea, but he kind of put that, he's already, so he could have made these decisions before, Tinubu came into office, but he decided to leave the fuel subsidies. Buhari never wanted to remove those subsidies. That's what's just clear. He felt he was doing poor Nigerians a favor, and he never wanted to remove them. So of course, it makes sense that he would say, well, you take off the subsidies and you put the palliatives in place. So again, we'll see what president-elect, if the court cases go this way, see what he does.
So does this in some way put an end to that rumor that the president-elect was trying to get the Buhari administration to remove fuel subsidies before he came into office?
Yeah, that kills that rumor essentially, because and then that rumor was never, it was something I heard, it was never confirmed. It was just people who were sources telling me what they had heard about. Yeah, but that puts an end to that, because if they're telling him to pick his palliatives, then that means they're pushing the subsidy removal decision to him. That's essentially what it is. Yeah.
All right. So speaking about these palliatives, what do you think the president-elect could actually put in place that would be effective?
Yeah. So it's a hard thing, because you're essentially you're just shifting a subsidy from one place to the other. You're subsidizing something else so people don't feel the impact. I think, I don't know. The most reasonable thing maybe would be transportation costs. But how do you apply that across the country, and how do you make sure? You see, this is the problem. Maybe for BRT, you can subsidize transportation costs for BRT, but BRT already is subsidized. The bus rides, they've controlled the price as far as Lagos is concerned. Speaking about Lagos now, I don't know how you can say you will control transport fare in Kano, or you control transport fare in Akwa Ibom, but he's got to apply, because transport fares are going to skyrocket. And since we move over 90-something% of items across our roads, that's the most reasonable palliative you can apply. So you've got to try and put a cap on transport fare. How do you implement it though? That's the issue. How do you stop bus drivers from not raising transport fares? You could also apply it to I mean, you can apply to anything you want. You could apply to the tariffs for power. You could, try and, reduce how much people pay for power. You're essentially basically just trying to take the money you have saved, put it somewhere else. His student loans that he's been talking about, he's been promising student loans. He can make an announcement that student loans are, I don't know, 2% per year or whatever. So he has choices. He just has to make sure it's implemented properly and people feel it.
All right, we're talking about the possible palliatives for the fuel subsidy removal. The Buhari government says that the subsidy palliatives are up to the president-elect. If you've got a thoughts or comments, please let us know. The WhatsApp number is 0809 444 0981. Benga says, I believe it's better for the Buhari administration to leave the fuel subsidy removal and attendant troubles to the president-elect. He should by now have a plan on what to do to alleviate the social upheaval that will come with the removal of subsidies. There is no way out of it. When that happens, everything will skyrocket, goods, products, services, etc. Even now, some employees don't go to work every day as a result of rising costs. Think of how it would be when they remove subsidies. Guess we'll all be working from home. All right. So, Rotus, what tightrope is the president-elect walking here with these subsidies?
Well, it's like main message just now. I mean, there's no way out. He will be taking over a country where majority of Nigerians did not vote for him. If you add up the votes for whoever that went to the other candidates, so you can't really argue that he has a mandate like Buhari did in 2019 when Buhari got like a maximum votes. He got like 15 million, Atiku got 11 million, and everybody else was just by the wayside. So, the tightrope is you remove these subsidies and people get really angry. And because with all the talk of subsidy, I've been screaming subsidy removal for years on Smooth FM and everywhere else. Still, I don't know if the message is permeating to the average Nigerian. There are people, some of our listeners don't support, removal of subsidy. Yeah, you're one of them. Dikpo is another person, another listener of ours that doesn't support removing them. But so how do you appease those people? You've got to make sure those palliatives are effective and they are immediate. Remember, and Tinubu does speak with an air of, some call it confidence, some call it arrogance. He said no matter what the protests are, he doesn't care. He's removing them and doesn't care. So he really put his foot forward. So now he's got to back it up. And I mean, for people to be protesting once you enter office is really not a good sign. So he's really got to thread the needle here, and he's got to move quickly and he's got to move effectively.
Is there a chance though that he would walk back the subsidy removal promise? And if by any chance he does, what would be the consequences?
Well, I mean, look, the forecast from a forum the other day was that fuel could hit 750 naira per liter. Diesel is at that level, 7-something, 800. So you can imagine driving those two at that level. That is really going to have an impact. And so if he thinks about what the impact would be, maybe, yeah, there's a chance he could walk it back. But if he does walk it back, then now he's put himself in a situation because he's now walked back one of the early promises that he made in the first month of his administration. So that would not augur well for confidence in his ability to say what he means and mean what he says. So he has to just follow through at this point.
So what other economic hurdles are waiting for Mr. Tinubu?
If I listed them all, we'd be here for the rest of the day. So I mean, just off the top of my head, he's got to address interest rates, high interest rates. People can't borrow money at a reasonable rate. He's got to address crime. Which affects foreign investment. He's got to address power, which is a big one. He's got to address inflation, which will climb once he removes fuel subsidies. He's got to address so many things, so many.
Wow. All right, let's talk lending rates. 28%, that is the maximum lending rate. What does that do to the economy?
It chokes the economy, Zibby. I mean, can you imagine us living our lives and not being able to go to a bank and get a reasonable loan? I mean, he really has to make this a priority. President Buhari didn't even care. I mean, I don't think in his entire tenure, and this is going back to the 1980s, I don't know if he ever mentioned interest rates ever. And anyone who wants to test it can do a Google search, Buhari and interest rates, if he ever even said the words. Credit is so important. So important. I know that Vice President Osibanjo in 2017 or 2018, he signed or put in place a movable asset registry act where allows people to use portable assets to get loans. That thing didn't really do anything. Lending rates are still high. So it's incredibly important. As the Monetary Policy Committee keeps raising the MPR, the monetary policy rates, cost of borrowing is going to keep going up, and you're choking the economy and choking individuals by not allowing them to be able to get reasonably priced credit to live their lives, start a business, buy a home, and so on and so forth.
So how will this affect or impact the student loan promise made by the president-elect?
He would essentially be subsidizing the student loans if he goes through with it. He's making this promise since 2015 when he was campaigning for Buhari. So if he's saying that he's going to, first of all, he didn't tell us what rates he's going to offer student loans at. If we assume the rates are going to be affordable for students, then he's going to subsidize that rate. And what I mean is that if your lending rate is 28%, and you're saying that you're going to give students 9 or 8%, then you have to pay for that difference between 28% and 9%. So you now start subsidizing the rate. So maybe he does that if he removes fuel subsidies. But then which students will qualify? Then look, it's just, it's heavy. It's real heavy.
All right. So how can he actually bring down these interest rates?
You got to make cost of doing business lower. So if you think about banks, how much they pay for keeping their branches open, these will cause banks to reduce their hours, right? I don't think a number of banks have not gone back to their old hours. So you've got to reduce the cost of doing business in the country. And one of the main things that makes business high in this country is power. So all these things are linked. If you solve power, which you can't solve by tomorrow or next week, then you can drastically bring down the cost of borrowing. And maybe banks will lend at a more reasonable rate. So that's another big hurdle for him to tackle for his economic team that he puts in place.
All right, let's look at a few messages. Yinka says, how did we arrive at 700 naira per litre for petrol when we are paying 185 per litre at the moment, meaning that the federal government pays 500 naira per litre at the moment? We really need to talk about this. And Wale says, I feel for the president-elect. He'll remove fuel subsidies, electricity and high institution subsidies at a go. He needs to do this to restructure all the loans. He will need to realign the currency. How he will survive this, I can only imagine. And Ahmed says, subsidy removal, the fact is the masses will suffer through increase in price of transportation. We all know what the commercial buses will do. Why can't the federal government give the subsidy to Dangote refinery so that it will be more transparent? And Benga says, we can't borrow from banks because of the interest rates now. I wonder if the environment will not completely stifle businesses when they remove fuel subsidies. If subsidies go, then how can you reduce cost of doing business? And right, one final message. Rotus, I know you've always been an advocate of removal of fuel subsidies, but I bet the impact might lead to something else considering what Nigerians have gone through in the past few months. I insist it is better for the government to focus on sanitizing the subsidy payments than removing it. Will you stop giving your child food if his teacher eats his lunch in school? All right.
Those are great messages. Great messages. Thank you all for your messages. Solid messages as usual. It's a fascinating time, Zibby. The clock is ticking. May 29th, his sign is sworn in. By the end, the D-Day is end of June. End of June. We'll see what's up on July 1st. So everybody stay tuned.
Oh, wow. Rotus, you sound almost excited.
No, because it's such a hard decision. I don't envy him. I don't want to be in his shoes because it's easy for me as an analyst to say, remove subsidy, remove subsidy, remove subsidy. Until you have to ahead. So, man, let's see. I don't know. I mean, let's just see if he does it. Let's see.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Rotus, for joining on the show this morning. And thank you for your messages. And thanks for listening. Do stay with us. There's a lot more to come on the Smooth Breakfast.